This is a real business, not some kind of hobby. Victoria Bennett's voice cut through the boardroom like a knife, her perfectly manicured hands spread flat against the polished mahogany table. We need someone who understands the corporate world, not just tinkering. I sat across from her, my back straight despite the trembling in my hands. 6 years of research and development, countless late nights in the lab, all the breakthroughs I'd achieved for Bennett Technologies. And this was how it ended. Mother, Daniel, my husband, started from his seat beside me, but Victoria silenced him with a sharp look. No, Daniel, this isn't up for discussion. The board agrees with me. Olivia's experiments might have been entertaining when we were a smaller company, but we're going public in 6 months. We need real leadership, not a scientist playing at being an executive. My name is Olivia Foster Bennett, and at 32, I was about to be forced out of the company I'd helped build. Not that Victoria would ever admit my contributions. To her, I was just the girl who'd married her precious son, the one who didn't quite fit into her polished corporate world. The timing of the product launch is critical, Victoria continued, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. We need someone with real business experience to handle this. Margaret will be taking over the R&D department effective immediately. Margaret Phillips, Victoria's goddaughter, sat at the far end of the table, trying and failing to hide her smug smile. She'd been gunning for my position since she joined the company 3 months ago, armed with an MBA from Wharton and a pedigree Victoria approved of. I glanced down at the papers in front of me, the transition agreement they expected me to sign. A generous severance package, they called it. More like hush money to keep me quiet while they pushed me out. And if I refuse? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Victoria's smile tightened. Then we'll have to revisit your employment contract. I'm sure you remember the non-compete clause. It would be a shame if you couldn't work in this industry for the next 5 years. Of course I remembered. I'd helped draft that contract back when I thought I was protecting our company, our family. How naive I'd been. Daniel shifted uncomfortably beside me. Mother, maybe we should discuss this further. Olivia's work has been crucial too. Enough, Daniel, Victoria snapped. This isn't about sentiment, this is business. The board has made its decision. I looked around the room at the board members, men and women who'd watched me grow this company from the ground up. None of them would meet my eyes. They were all too afraid of Victoria Bennett, the CEO who turned her late husband's small tech firm into a major player in the industry. What they didn't know, what Victoria had forgotten in her rush to push me out, was that I'd done more than just tinker in my lab. Every major breakthrough, every patent that had made Bennett Technologies a valuable acquisition target had my name on it. Not the company's name. Mine. But I kept that knowledge to myself as I stood up, gathering my papers with steady hands. I'll need time to review these documents with my lawyer, I said calmly. Victoria waved dismissively. Take all the time you need. But I expect your office cleared out by the end of the day. Margaret needs to hit the ground running. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. As I walked toward the door, I heard Margaret's voice, sickly sweet. Don't worry, Olivia. I'll take good care of your projects. I didn't respond. Let them think they'd won. Let them believe I was just another corporate casualty pushed aside for someone with better connections and the right background. They had no idea what was coming. The elevator ride down to my office felt surreal. 6 years of memories flashed through my mind. The late nights working on prototypes, the breakthrough moments, the celebrations when we landed major contracts. I'd met Daniel here, both of us fresh out of graduate school, idealistic and ready to change the world. He'd been different then, before his mother's influence had slowly chipped away at his backbone. The Daniel I fell in love with would have stood up for me, would have recognized the injustice of what was happening. But that Daniel had disappeared somewhere between our wedding day and his promotion to CFO. When I reached my office, my soon-to-be former office, I found boxes already stacked by the door. They hadn't even waited for me to agree to their terms. Typical Victoria, always assuming she'd get her way. I sat down at my desk one last time, running my fingers along the smooth surface. This wasn't how I'd imagined my last day would be. I'd always thought when I left, it would be on my terms, maybe to start my own company or take on a new challenge. Instead, I was being pushed out by a woman who'd never accepted me, never seen me as anything more than an inconvenience, the scientist who'd somehow trapped her son into marriage. My computer pinged with a new email. From Victoria, of course. HR will assist with your exit process. Please ensure all company materials remain on premises. We'll mail any personal items after they've been cleared by security. Regards, Victoria Bennett, CEO, Bennett Technologies. I couldn't help but laugh. She really thought she had everything under control. She'd probably already drafted the press release announcing Margaret's promotion, spinning some story about exciting new leadership and fresh perspectives. Opening my drawer, I pulled out a small USB drive, one that Victoria didn't know existed. On it was everything I'd need. Copies of my patent applications, email trails proving my ownership of key technologies, and documentation of every breakthrough I'd achieved while carefully maintaining my individual rights. Victoria had been so focused on pushing me out that she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I'd never signed over my patents to Bennett Technologies. They had a license to use my technology, yes, but the underlying intellectual property? That belonged to me. I slipped the drive into my pocket just as there was a knock at my door. Daniel stood there, looking uncomfortable in his perfectly tailored suit. "Liv," he said softly, using the nickname he hadn't used in months. "I'm sorry. I tried to talk to her, but you know how she gets." I stared at him, really looking at my husband for the first time in a long while. When had he become this? This weak, spineless version of the man I'd married? "Did you know?" I asked quietly. "Did you know she was planning this?" He couldn't meet my eyes. She mentioned some concerns about the IPO, about how investors might perceive. Perceive what, Daniel? That your wife actually knows what she's doing? That I'm more than just some hobby scientist playing at business? "That's not fair," he protested weakly. "Mother's just trying to do what's best for the company." I shook my head, disappointment heavy in my chest. "No, she's doing what's best for her image, and you're letting her, just like you always do." He took a step forward, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." The hurt in his eyes might have moved me once, but not today. Not after this. "I'll have my things out of the house by tonight," I told him, turning back to my desk. "I think it's best if I stay at a hotel for now." "Liv, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." I started gathering my personal items. The few things that weren't company property. My framed diplomas, a photo of my parents, the small robot figurine I'd built in college that had started me on this path. "We can work this out," Daniel said, hovering in the doorway. "Once the IPO is done, maybe." I cut him off with a sharp laugh. "The IPO. Right? Good luck with that." He frowned, catching something in my tone. "What do you mean?" But I just shook my head, picking up my bag and a small box of belongings. "Goodbye, Daniel. Tell your mother I'll have my lawyer review those documents." As I walked past him, he caught my arm. "Olivia, wait. What are you planning?" I gently removed his hand, meeting his eyes one last time. "You know what your mother always says. It's just business, nothing personal." I left him standing there, confusion written across his face. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder. Because while Victoria Bennett might have won this battle, thinking she'd outmaneuvered her inconvenient daughter-in-law, she had no idea what was coming. In 6 months, when Bennett Technologies tried to launch their new product line, my product line, they'd learn exactly who they'd underestimated. But for now, I had work to do. Real work, not the corporate games Victoria was so fond of playing. I had patents to review, lawyers to meet, and plans to make. After all, Victoria had taught me one valuable lesson. In business, timing is everything. And my time was just beginning. As I drove away from Bennett Technologies for the last time, my phone buzzed with texts from Daniel. "Please come home. We can talk about this. Mother didn't mean to be so harsh. Don't do anything rash." I ignored them all, focusing on the road ahead. The signs for downtown Atlanta blurred past as I made my way to the one person who would understand exactly what I needed to do next. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of Carter and Associates, one of the city's top intellectual property law firms. Marcus Carter had been my advisor's attorney back in graduate school, and he'd helped me set up my patent portfolio when I first joined Bennett Technologies. He was waiting for me in the lobby, his dark eyes sharp behind his glasses. "I saw the writing on the wall months ago," he said as he led me to his office. "Been waiting for your call." I settled into one of his leather chairs, finally letting some of my tension show. Victoria finally made her move. Marcus nodded, pulling out a thick file. And you're sure you want to do this? Once we start, there's no going back. Victoria Bennett isn't known for taking challenges lightly. Neither am I said firmly. Show me what we need to do. For the next 3 hours, we went over everything: my patents, the licensing agreements, the careful paper trail I maintained. Marcus had helped me structure everything perfectly from the beginning, ensuring that while Bennett Technologies had the right to use my technology, they didn't own it. The timing works in our favor, Marcus said, making notes. They can't launch the new product line without your patents, and any attempt to work around them would set them back years. The IPO would be dead in the water. I leaned back, a plan forming in my mind. So we wait. We wait, he agreed. Let them announce the launch. Let them start the IPO process. Then we show them exactly who they're dealing with. As I left Marcus's office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Victoria thought she'd backed me into a corner, but she actually given me exactly what I needed: freedom to make my next move without her constant surveillance. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Daniel. Mother wants to know if you've reviewed the documents yet. Please don't make this difficult. I smiled, thinking of the documents sitting untouched in my bag. Victoria's carefully crafted severance agreement designed to keep me quiet and compliant. Tell her I'll have an answer soon, I typed back. Oh, I'd have an answer for Victoria Bennett, just not the one she was expecting. The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. I moved into a small but modern apartment in Midtown, throwing myself into preparation. During the day, I met with lawyers, investors, and potential partners. At night, I reviewed my research, identifying which technologies were most crucial to Bennett's upcoming launch. Victoria, meanwhile, wasted no time announcing my departure. The press release was exactly as I predicted. Bennett Technologies announces new R&D leadership: Margaret Phillips to head Innovation Division as company prepares for growth. The article quoted Victoria extensively, praising Margaret's fresh perspective and strong business acumen. My name wasn't mentioned once, as if my 6 years of contributions had never existed. Daniel continued to text and call, his messages growing increasingly worried as I maintained my distance. He'd moved back to his parents' mansion in Buckhead. Temporarily, he claimed, though we both knew better. We need to talk about this, he said when I finally answered one of his calls. About us. There isn't much to talk about, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Your mother made her choice. You made yours. By not fighting her? What was I supposed to do? Live? She's the CEO. You were supposed to stand up for what's right, Daniel. For once in your life, you were supposed to stand up to her. He was quiet for a moment. Is that why you won't sign the severance agreement? To punish me? I almost laughed. He still didn't get it. No, Daniel. I'm not signing because I don't need their money. And soon, they're going to need something from me far more than I need anything from them. What are you talking about? Liv, you're starting to sound like your mother, I suggested. Maybe she taught me more than she realized. I ended the call before he could respond. Let him worry. Let him wonder. He'd find out soon enough. 3 months after my forced departure, Bennett Technologies made their big announcement. Victoria had gathered the press, analysts, and major investors for a special presentation at their headquarters. I watched the live stream from Marcus's office, a cold smile playing at my lips as Victoria took the stage in her signature power suit. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice confident and clear. Today marks a new chapter in Bennett Technologies' history. Under the brilliant leadership of our R&D director, Margaret Phillips, we are preparing to launch a revolutionary new product line that will change the face of medical technology forever. The presentation that followed was slick and professional, full of promises about breakthrough innovation and unprecedented market potential. Margaret stood beside Victoria, basking in the praise as they unveiled prototypes of devices that I had designed, technologies that I had created. When they opened the floor for questions, a familiar face stood up. Sarah Chen from the Wall Street Journal, known for her sharp analysis of tech companies. Ms. Bennett, Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly through the stream. These technologies seem remarkably similar to patents held by Olivia Foster. Can you comment on the licensing arrangements? The briefest flicker of uncertainty crossed Victoria's face before her media training kicked in. All intellectual property used in our products is properly licensed and documented, she said smoothly. Bennett Technologies has full rights to everything we're presenting today. I turned to Marcus, who was already reaching for his phone. Shall we? He nodded, a predatory smile spreading across his face. Time to show them what a real business looks like. I pulled out my own phone and opened the email I prepared weeks ago. One click, and Victoria Bennett's carefully constructed plans would start to crumble. Send it, I said. The email went out to every major tech publication, every analyst following Bennett Technologies, and every investor invited to today's presentation. PKNT Hivolodr challenges Bennett Technologies' right to name product line. Olivia Foster announces review of all technology licenses. The reaction was immediate. On a live stream, I watched as phones started buzzing throughout the audience. Victoria was still talking, but people had stopped paying attention, their faces buried in their screens. Then Sarah Chen stood up again, interrupting Victoria mid-sentence. Ms. Bennett, we've just received a statement from Olivia Foster claiming that Bennett Technologies' license to use her patents expires in 3 months, before your planned product launch. Would you care to comment? The look on Victoria's face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured. For once, the great Victoria Bennett was speechless, and this was just the beginning. The chaos that followed my announcement was everything I'd anticipated and more. Victoria tried to maintain control of the situation, but the damage was done. Investors were already leaving the presentation, phones pressed to their ears as they called their brokers. Margaret stood frozen on stage, her carefully rehearsed speech forgotten. I closed my laptop, turning to Marcus with a satisfied smile. How long before she calls? He checked his watch. Given her temper, 3, 2, 1. My phone lit up with Victoria's number right on cue. You should take it, Marcus advised, already reaching for his notepad. Remember, every word matters now. I answered on the third ring, keeping my voice professional and calm. Hello, Victoria. What do you think you're doing? She hissed, her composure finally cracking. Do you have any idea what you've just done? Actually, I do, I replied. I'm protecting my intellectual property rights. Isn't that what you taught me about business? Always protect your assets? Your assets. She practically spat the words. Everything you developed was for Bennett Technologies. You can't just. Can't what, Victoria? Can't stand up for myself. Can't run a real business. I let my words sink in before continuing. Check your contracts. Every patent, every innovation you just promised your investors, they're all licensed to Bennett Technologies under my name. And those licenses expire in exactly 3 months. There was a long pause. I could almost see her face, that perfectly controlled mask slipping as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice tight. I want what I've earned, but we can discuss the details with our respective legal teams. I'm sure you'll want to review everything thoroughly this time. This isn't over, she warned. No, I agreed. It's just beginning. I ended the call and looked at Marcus, who was grinning broadly. Well done, he said. Very well done. But we both knew this was just the opening move. Victoria Bennett hadn't built her empire by backing down from a fight, and she wasn't about to start now. Sure enough, within hours, Bennett Technologies' legal team began flooding Marcus's office with demands and threats. They claimed my patents were developed under work-for-hire agreements. They threatened to sue for breach of contract. They even tried to argue that my marriage to Daniel gave the company rights to my intellectual property. But Marcus and I had prepared for everything. Every contract, every patent application, every piece of documentation had been carefully structured from the beginning. I might have been naive about office politics, but I'd never been naive about protecting my work. Daniel showed up at my apartment that evening, looking more disheveled than I'd ever seen him. His tie was loose, his hair a mess from running his hands through it. Can I come in? He asked when I opened the door. Please, Liv. We need to talk. I considered turning him away, but something in his expression made me step aside. He walked in, taking in my new space, the modern furniture, the small but well-equipped home office, the wall of technical books and journals. You've been busy, he said quietly. Someone once told me that success requires dedication. I replied, thinking of all the times Victoria had lectured me about real business. He sank onto my couch, looking defeated. Mother's furious. The board is in panic mode. Our stock dropped 15% after your announcement. 23%. I corrected him. I've been watching the markets. He looked up at me, really seeing me perhaps for the first time in years. You planned this all along, didn't you? Even before they pushed you out? No, I said honestly. I planned it the moment your mother made it clear that my contributions meant nothing to her. The moment she tried to steal my life's work and hand it to Margaret like it was hers to give. She didn't understand. She understood perfectly. I cut him off. She just didn't care. She never has. To her, I was just the scientist who wasn't good enough for her son, who didn't fit into her perfect corporate image. That's not true, he protested weakly. Really? I moved to my desk and pulled out a file. These are copies of emails between your mother and Margaret going back 6 months. Planning my removal. Discussing how to handle the transition of my projects. Want to know what your mother wrote about me? He shook his head, but I continued anyway. She called me a necessary inconvenience that needed to be managed out before the IPO. Said it was time for you to think about your future and consider more suitable partnerships. Daniel's face paled. Where did you get those? I'm a tech expert, remember? The one your mother thought was just playing at business. I sat down across from him. The question is, did you know about this plan? He couldn't meet my eyes. I knew she wasn't happy about us. About how it would look to investors, having a researcher in such a key position. But I never thought she'd actually do it, or never thought I'd fight back. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Daniel looked up, his eyes tired and sad. What do you want, Liv? Name your price. Whatever it takes to fix this. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Fix this? You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about money, Daniel. This is about respect. About recognition for what I've built. What price would you put on that? Mother will never agree to give you back your position, he said. You know how she is. I don't want my position back, I said, standing up. I don't want anything from Bennett Technologies. What I want is for Victoria to understand exactly what she lost when she decided to throw me away. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Thompson Medical just reached out. They want to meet. I smiled, remembering Victoria's dismissal of my tinkering. Thompson Medical was Bennett Technologies' biggest competitor, and they'd been trying to break into the same market sector for years. You should go, I told Daniel, moving toward the door. I have a meeting to prepare for. He stood slowly, looking lost in his perfectly tailored suit. Liv, please, don't do this. Don't destroy everything we've built. I'm not destroying anything, I said softly. I'm building something new, something of my own. After you left, I sat down at my desk and pulled up the presentation I'd been working on. Thompson Medical wasn't the only company interested in my technology. Without Bennett Technologies' restrictions, without Victoria's constant interference, I was free to explore all the applications I'd been forced to shelve. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, negotiations, and legal maneuvers. Victoria, true to form, tried every trick she could think of to regain control. She had her PR team spin stories about corporate espionage and betrayal. She tried to pressure mutual business contacts to blacklist me. She even attempted to freeze my personal bank accounts, claiming they were tied to company assets. But for every move she made, I was 2 steps ahead. The patents were mine, the documentation was clear, and the technology market was hungry for innovation. While Bennett Technologies' stock continued to fall, my own prospects were rising. Thompson Medical wasn't just interested in licensing my existing patents. They wanted to fund my research into new applications, with complete creative control and a significant equity stake in the resulting technologies. They're offering you a seat on their board, Marcus told me during one of our strategy sessions. Victoria is going to lose her mind when she finds out. I was reviewing the proposal when my phone buzzed with an unexpected name, Margaret Phillips. Should I take it? I asked Marcus. He shrugged. Could be interesting. Hello, Margaret, I answered, keeping my tone neutral. Olivia. She sounded nervous, nothing like the smug woman who'd taken my office. I need to talk to you. In person. It's important. I considered refusing, but curiosity won out. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. There's a cafe called the Edison on Peachtree. Don't be late. Margaret was already waiting when I arrived the next morning, fidgeting with her coffee cup. Her designer suit looked slightly rumpled, her usual perfect appearance showing signs of strain. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "I know you probably hate me." "I don't hate you, Margaret," I interrupted. "I nothing you. You're just another player in Victoria's game." She flinched but pressed on. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. About Victoria. About what's really been happening at Bennett Technologies." For the next hour, Margaret laid out a story that confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed new ones. Victoria hadn't just wanted to push me out. She'd been systematically undermining my work for years, taking credit for my innovations while ensuring I remained in a subordinate position. "She has files," Margaret said, her voice low. "Documentation she's been building, trying to prove the patents should belong to the company. She's planning to sue, to tie you up in court until you're forced to settle." I smiled, thinking of my own carefully maintained records. "Let her try." "You don't understand," Margaret insisted. "She's desperate. The IPO is falling apart, investors are pulling out, and Thompson Medical just announced their new partnership with you. She's talking about criminal charges, about fraud." "Is that why you're here?" I asked, studying her carefully. "To warn me, or to save yourself?" She had the grace to look ashamed. "Both," she admitted. I thought I was getting my dream job. But it's all built on lies, and when it falls apart. I sat back, considering. Margaret might be naive and ambitious, but she wasn't evil. She was just another pawn in Victoria's chess game. "Send me copies of everything," I said finally. "All the files, all the documentation. Do that, and I'll make sure you land on your feet when this is over." Her relief was palpable. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll send everything tonight." As I walked back to my car, I felt the final pieces of my plan falling into place. Victoria thought she could bury me in legal battles. Fine. Let her try. I had truth on my side, and now I had evidence of her attempted fraud. That evening, as I was reviewing Margaret's files, Daniel called again. "Mother's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow," he said without preamble. "She's going to try to force through a lawsuit against you." "I know," I replied calmly. "You know." "I know everything, Daniel, including what your mother's been planning for years. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" He was quiet for a long moment. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you going to keep standing by while she destroys the company your father built? While she burns everything down rather than admit she was wrong? What choice do I have?" "There's always a choice," I said softly. "You just have to be brave enough to make it." The next morning, I dressed carefully in my favorite power suit, not one of the ones Victoria had helped me choose, but one I bought myself after leaving Bennett Technologies. It was time for the final act. Marcus met me in the lobby of Bennett Technologies headquarters, both of us armed with files and evidence. We timed our arrival perfectly, just as the board members were gathering for Victoria's emergency meeting. "Ready?" he asked as we stepped into the elevator. "Ready," I confirmed. The boardroom fell silent as we walked in, Victoria freezing mid-sentence at the head of the table. Daniel sat to her right, Margaret to her left, both looking pale but determined. "What is the meaning of this?" Victoria demanded. "This is a private board meeting." "Actually," I said, setting my files on the table, "this is exactly where we need to be. We have evidence of systematic fraud, attempted patent theft, and corporate espionage. Evidence that every person in this room needs to see." "How dare you," Victoria began, but the board chairman cut her off. "Let her speak," he said, his eyes sharp. "Given the company's current situation, I think we all need to hear this." For the next hour, I laid out everything: the documentation of my patents, the evidence of Victoria's attempts to steal them, the proof of her long-term plan to push me out while taking credit for my work. Margaret's files provided the final devastating pieces of evidence. When I finished, the silence in the room was deafening. Victoria stood, her face flushed with rage. "This is ridiculous. She's trying to destroy this company out of spite." "No, Mother," Daniel's voice cut through her protest. "She's trying to save it. From you." All eyes turned to him as he stood, straightening his shoulders. I moved for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current CEO. Victoria's face went white. "Daniel, what are you doing?" "What I should have done years ago," he said. "Standing up for what's right." The vote was unanimous. Within an hour, Victoria Bennett was no longer CEO of Bennett Technologies. Within 2 hours, the board had approved my proposal: a partnership with Thompson Medical that would save both companies while protecting my patents. As the board members filed out, already talking about transition plans and damage control, Daniel approached me. "I know it's too late," he said quietly. "Too late for us, I mean, but thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "Take care of the company, Daniel. Make your father proud." 6 months later, I sat in my new office at Thompson Medical, looking out over the Atlanta skyline. The wall behind my desk displayed my patents, not hidden away in a lab, but proudly showcased for everyone to see. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Bennett Technologies announces successful merger with Thompson Medical. Former CEO Victoria Bennett retires. I smiled, thinking of how far I'd come from that day in the boardroom when Victoria had tried to dismiss me as just a hobbyist playing at business. Now I was on the board of directors at one of the largest medical technology companies in the country. My innovations were saving lives, and I was finally truly free. Victoria had taught me one last valuable lesson. Success isn't just about having the right patents or the right technology. It's about knowing your worth and being brave enough to fight for it. As I turned back to my work, I noticed a small package on my desk. Inside was a familiar object, the robot figurine from my college days that had started me on this path. With it was a note in Daniel's handwriting. "Thought this belonged with its creator. Thank you for teaching me what real business looks like." I placed the figurine on my desk, a reminder of where I'd started and how far I'd come. Victoria had tried to write me off as just another hobbyist, but she'd forgotten the most important rule of business. Never underestimate a woman with nothing left to lose and everything to prove.